Exactly, Murph. 90 million did not vote in the United States. We can't have that here. And part of the reason, you know what? It is time. Thank you. It is time that I officially start. So welcome to Beaver Politics. This is News Hour with Frontline Feminist. For the next month, though, I'm going to focus more so on just election stuff. We're just going to be talking about election stuff nonstop so that everybody that tunes in understands that there is an election coming up in just 34 days and we need to get prepared for it. So what I was talking about, though, is there's many different types of propaganda and many different types of manipulation tactics that we are going to see in terms of getting people not to vote. One of them is obviously fear and hate and rage, as we're very aware of that. But the other one is just sow confusion, to make people so confused about who to vote for that they just choose to not vote at all, right? There's a lot of comments that you're going to see on different social media platforms that say things like, it doesn't matter, they're all the same, it doesn't matter, they're all the same, right? So that's actually a tactic that's used by bots and by people that sow confusion to get people not to vote. So that's also a thing, and we need to be very aware that that's going to be happening. And that's a big part of what happened in the United States. Huge part of it, right? There was a ton of people that just thought to themselves, they're both just as bad, they're both evil, I'm not going to vote for either or. And look what happened, right? That was a manipulation tactic that was used. So we're going to see a lot of that, right? Like that's kind of the biggest thing that we're going to have to combat, and it's going to take a community effort. It's going to take the effort of the people. Anyone who is passionate about this, who knows what's going on, needs to do something. Whether it's commenting, whether it's debunking misinformation from random people online, whether it's talking to your community, people at the rec center, people in the gym, people at the grocery store, whatever it is, you got to do something, right? It's going to take all of us, because we are going to be swimming in misinformation over the next month. I mean, we've been swimming in it for years. We know that we've been swimming in it for years, but we are going to be like neck deep in it for the next month. We're going to see a lot of crazy stuff. So we got to be really diligent where we're getting our information, what we're listening to, fact check everything. It's going to be a wild ride. Like I said, I even saw some comments already. There was comments in some of my videos today about how this whole thing with Pierre Poilievre that came out, that Globe and Mail broke the story this morning about CSIS basically having evidence that there was election interference involved in Pierre's leadership race, but they can't tell him about it because he doesn't have clearance, right? That already has now turned into a conspiracy about how the Liberals are using CSIS to rig the election in their favor. I kid you not. And I also said, like, mark my words, no matter what, no matter who wins, it's still going to be a really bumpy ride after, because even if the Liberals win, I'm telling you right now, there will be our own version of January 6th. I honestly do believe that. I think that these guys are going to get so upset if the Liberals win, they're not going to be able to accept it as reality, and they're going to say the election was rigged, and they're going to have another version of their Freedom Convoy. That is what I'm predicting. And unfortunately, I wish I wasn't good at predicting stuff, but I am, because everything that I've predicted so far has come true, which honestly makes me really sad, because you don't want to know what other predictions I have. I'm hoping that they change as new information comes in and makes me change my opinion. But for now, I don't know. It's not looking pretty with the misinformation that's already out there, and that is spreading at a very fast rate on a lot of these kind of far-right social media platforms like X and what Facebook is becoming, and secret Telegram chats and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know if the U.S. is gonna invade or not right away. I know they're gonna try to do this economically. We'll see what happens. Honestly, I have no idea. That is something I cannot predict. Genuinely. That's one of the things that I do not feel I have enough information to say whether they're actually going to invade or not, because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if the United States is going to have their own sort of revolution before they get a chance to do that. I can see them probably going into Mexico before they try to actually put, boots on the ground in Canada, to be honest. That's my only prediction for now. Let's see. Yeah, the curse of pattern recognition. It's not fun, is it, right, Sasquatch? It's really not fun. Sometimes I really wish that I didn't have that. Well, see, that's the thing. Greenland, they would actually have a much easier time getting to Greenland through Canada, to be honest. So that's why I think they want to take Canada without boots on the ground, or just through economic ways, so then they can use our land to get to Greenland more easily. I honestly don't know if another thing I'm not going to predict, because again, new patterns, don't know. In the United States, I was pretty sure that Trump was going to win, especially when I saw the Ashmashmation attempt. I think it was June or July, and I remember that day. I was like, he's winning. He's going to win. I saw the pattern of misinformation, but now with us seeing what's been going on in the States, I am seeing a pattern of people waking up. I am seeing a pattern of more people going like, oh, wow, I need to get politically involved for the first time in my life. But as much as I see that pattern, I know how powerful misinformation is. I know how powerful propaganda is, and I know how much money conservatives have to pour into mis and disinformation, because it's not just the Conservative Party of Canada. It is the conservative far-right movement that is global. That is absolutely global. So there is misinformation coming at us from so many different countries constantly. And that's something that I don't know how to account for. But, I mean, if we look at the polls are favorable that the Liberals are going to win, but I don't trust polling. In America, the polls were a lot closer. So like when we looked at the Democrats versus the Republicans in the States, their polling actually had them very, very close. So they did poll that Kamala would win, but the polls were very close, right? And the win was very close, right? It was like 49 versus 48%. It was a margin, like a margin of humans that really made that difference. Here, that discrepancy is much bigger from what we see in the polls. So I'm hoping, that's where I'm getting my little glimmer of hope from, is that because there's that big discrepancy, right, in terms of number of seats that they have predicted, is that we might scrape by with a minority Liberal government, and that would be great. But I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm not predicting that. The only thing I can predict is that if we are not, vigilant, if we are not annoying to people about the importance of voting, then it's going to be a rough go, because that's the biggest problem with people on the left. And I don't even want to call it left, because left, centrists, whatever, anything but conservative. The problem with anything but conservative is that they do get apathetic. They don't really pay attention to the news that much. But the conservatives that love their conservative party, they get out and vote no matter what. They will take time off work. They don't care. They will vote. They always come out. They always vote. So that's what we got to work on, is just to make sure that people are getting out there. Like if you live in an apartment building and you have a car, figure out who in your apartment building maybe has a disability and maybe it's hard for them to get out and vote or something like that, and offer to take them. Offer to take people. Offer to show people how to do early voting. Offer to volunteer, right, for your local polling station. Just get involved. I am going to go shut my window because it is getting incredibly loud from the cars outside, and I will be right back. There, that's probably much better and much more quiet now. Yeah, so let's see. Liberals misinformation campaign in full swing, I see. Well, we feel the same way about you, so there we go. Usually an NDP voter, but this is my first time voting Liberal. Yeah, I mean, we got to strategically vote. That's my own personal opinion. I don't care what you do. Everyone has their own way of voting. I could care less. I'm just giving my own personal opinion is that we don't want to split the vote. And to be honest, like, for example, the NDP is really not doing that well in the polling right now. It's not. But if we were to strategically vote, they actually might get more seats than they're predicted to get. So figure out your riding. Make sure that you go to Elections Canada. There is a new button that says figure out your riding for the general 2025 election. Look that up because a lot of the ridings have changed. So look that up. Figure out your riding. Go to smartvoting.ca. Go through the drop-down menu, find your riding, click on it, look at who's got the better chance in your riding, and vote strategically. That is my advice. You don't have to follow it. You don't have to get mad at me for it. That is just my personal advice. Okay? Vote splitting is definitely could get us into trouble in certain areas of this country. All right. Yeah, Manitoba got an NDP majority because people voted smart. Yep. Sasquatch, you don't have to make your decision right now. The important thing is that you're going out to vote, and I'm happy about that. Hi, Jana. Yeah, so let's see. What else has happened outside of the fact that we now got confirmation for a lot of us that knew that there was some election interference happening back in Pierre's leadership race. But apart from that, I made actually a little list here. So yeah, we know that Carney has pledged for increased defense spending, right? Since we were talking about U.S. and our tensions with the U.S. So he's promised a significant boost in defense spending if reelected. Plans include purchasing new submarines, heavy icebreakers, modernizing the military procurement system. I think today he said that he wants to increase pay for military personnel as well, so that he can get more people involved in the military. It looks like the boycotts are doing good. Like, there's actually some response to a lot of Canadians that are choosing to avoid vacations in the States. It's led to a significant decrease in cross-border travel. It seems like the U.S. local economies are marginally impacted right now by us choosing more Canadian goods when we're in our grocery stores, so that's good. The Governor Tim Macklem has emphasized the central bank's commitment to preventing tariff-driven price increases from spending. So he's going to aim to keep inflation close to the 2% target despite recent economic pressures. Oh yeah, there was the rally on Parliament Hill. They're in Ottawa. Hundreds gathered for the Elbows Up Canada rally to protest President Trump's threats to Canada's sovereignty, emphasizing national unity and independence. Pretty sure it was led by Charlie Angus. The Communication Security Establishment Canada did release a report highlighting the growing use of artificial intelligence by foreign adversaries to target Canada's democratic processes, emphasizing the need for vigilance against AI-enabled disinformation campaigns. So that came out today. Oh yeah, Joe Rogan is canceling his Canadian appearance amid political tensions. Rogan announced that he will not attend an event in Montreal, citing dissatisfaction with international travel. And expressing frustration with Canada. Great, Joe. Don't come. We don't want you here. We're very happy you're not coming. And yeah, we already know this. Among external pressures, noticeable rise in Canadian pride among Canadians with increased support for domestic products and a focus on preserving Canada's sovereignty and cultural identity as peacekeepers. That was nice to hear. So we are seeing some positive movements, but at the same time, we're seeing some really, crazy disinformation movements at the same time. So, stay home, Joe. You're not welcome. Yeah, we don't need Joe Rogan. We're much better off without one of the biggest propaganda spreaders. And it's sad because a lot of those guys, the Alpha Bro podcasters, they weren't like that in the beginning. I'm pretty sure that they got bought off, or, it was just like they knew they were going to make more money and have more fame if they started spreading nonsense online. But here we are. All right, some of these comments I don't really get, but we don't need Joe, Elon, Jordan, or Mr. Not So Wonderful, yeah. Yeah, I mean, but Joe Rogan did like his health and wellness and fitness stuff in the beginning, right? And a lot of it was decent. As somebody that's been in the fitness industry for a long time, he was an okay guy in the beginning. Like he had like some midlife crisis and something changed in there, but he used to be kind of cool back in the day. Yeah, Jordan Peterson definitely has ties with Russia. We all know that. All right, well, it's 5:21. I said I wasn't going to talk that much about the States, even though there's some crazy stuff that's been happening in the States. So maybe I'll just mention this. And then we'll open up the panel and then we can just talk about Canada stuff. But you guys were aware that, the leaders of America decided to use a Signal group chat to talk about military plans, like classified military plans. And then they accidentally invited the editor-in-chief for The Atlantic into that chat. And at first, this journalist was like, is this real? Am I really in this chat? Is this actually happening right now? Like, this must be a prank. This must be a joke. It can't be real. And then 2 hours later, the strikes in Yemen on the Houthi rebels happened exactly as this chat was saying that they're going to happen. And there's, a couple of screenshots now from the chat. He obviously you can't get the real, classified info because the journalist was actually a good guy, and doesn't want to put people's lives at risk by talking about classified intel. But think about what would have happened if that didn't end up in the journalist's hands and it ended up in, say, like, Russia's hands, right? Like, those guys put American troops in danger by talking on a Signal chat. Like, it's so wild to me. And they're like giving each other emojis and like fist bumps after they decided to go through with the strike. And Vance was complaining that the strike would be helping Europe too much because it was about a trade route needing to be secured and opened up. So it was going to help Europe too much. And then Hegseth went on about how Europeans are freeloaders and that they don't like Europe. And they did it anyway, of course. But like, all of this was in the chat. And these are the guys running one of the most powerful militaries in the entire world. So it literally feels like we've given Reddit trolls nuclear codes. The level of incompetence is unreal. And these are all people that cried about Hillary's emails. Like, made a huge stink about it. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring up, is like all of these things that are happening to Republicans, conservatives, the level of incompetence, their interference, their crimes. If that ever happened to a liberal, to an NDP, to a Democrat, to a Green Party member, we would never hear the end of it. We would never think about the scandals, right? The Justin Trudeau scandals that were really not that big of a deal when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. When you look at Harper's scandals and the insane amount of scandals that he had that were much worse. But like that never gets talked about. That's no big deal. Like we're on such an unlevel playing field constantly, right? With the extreme far right. I don't understand how we've gotten to this point and how we truly change it. Like, how do we hold these people accountable? Because they're just going to use lies and manipulation when we try to hold them accountable and project and project and project. And it's just, it's crazy. But yeah, so that was the breaking news. Coming out of the United States, obviously top security personnel are freaking out about this. They're all losing their minds. Like, what are we going to do? If these were any like lower level employees that did that, they would get fired and they would have criminal charges. But because it's the top, Trump cronies, nothing's going to happen because they own the Justice Department. It's under their thumb. So nothing's going to happen. And they can do whatever they want. Nothing's going to happen. And it's happening. Like, they are doing whatever they want. The Aliens Act, sending innocent people off to prisons in El Salvador. Yeah, I'm sure some of them were gang members, of course. But they sent like 200 people there. Some we know now were just a regular person that decided to have a tattoo that they thought was gang related. And now they're in a prison in a tiny, tiny little cell that they can't even stand up in with actual like criminals, right? We're now hearing about detention camps. We're hearing about people unalived in detention camps due to lack of food and water. That just happened. We're hearing stories about people getting turned around at the border and not being allowed in just because they had stuff on their phone that was negative about the Trump administration. Like, seriously, this is what's happening in America, and much worse. I just don't want to say it on a live. I don't want to get my live taken down, and I also don't want to, freak people out too much, but this is all stuff that you can research and find. But is this what we want, Canada? Do we want to go down that same path? Because I don't. I think most of the people living in Canada, if they were very aware of what's actually happening in the States, they wouldn't either. There's only a small percentage of people that actually are signing up for the suffering of others. But we don't want this here. This is not who we are. We are not Americans. We are the peacekeepers. We are the land of diversity. We always have been. Canada has always brought people in from around the world to create diverse communities. I know maybe it's not as evident in some of the rural areas of Canada, but the main hubs have always been extremely diverse. Do we really want to go down that road as the United States when we know that our Conservative Party here is exactly like them? I sure don't. And with that, I'm going to open up the panel. So, come on up and let's chat.
Hola.
Hola. Here, I'm just going to change things up here. Make it into a... There we go.
Okay. So someone in chat was saying that PP has talked about wellness camps, quote unquote. Does anyone know anything about this? Is this true?
I've just seen TikToks talking about it. I have not seen like an article or anything like that, but I have heard that around for the past, I don't know, 2-3 months, I would say.
Yeah, I would love to have it somehow solidly because that's disturbing.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Whenever you start talking about wellness camps,
yeah,
you really
it'd be
mean,
nice to see a good concrete source on that and see.
I have not seen anything on that.
No.
I haven't seen
I've
any
just
So I
seen
don't
either.
people
know.
talk about it, but I have not seen like like I haven't seen a green screen. Like it's literally just people saying, "Oh, Pierre is talking about wellness camps," and it's just Sally Joe from Alberta. So I haven't seen a credible source on it. So I don't know. I don't. I wouldn't surprise me, but I'm not going to latch onto it too hard because I have not seen a credible source for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Where I'm at,
Sorry,
I
would it
appreciate you
surprise
guys
you?
not
I
doing
have
that either.
a
Hi
crappy
guys,
connection, but can you elaborate wellness camps? I
I'm
missed
gonna
that part.
elaborate.
Hold on, just real quick. I just want to first set out some guidelines. I'd really like it
Oh,
if we were
sorry,
all
yeah,
mute.
first time.
Oh no, it's okay. It's,
Sorry.
it's totally okay. I'm gonna have to go through the panel, ask you guys. Even though I know you all, I still have to ask you your age for TikTok purposes, and then I'm gonna get everybody to mute themselves when you're not talking, just so that everybody can hear the person that is talking better and more clear. And if it gets too crazy, I'll jump in and moderate. But try to let somebody finish their sentence and have there be like a little bit of a pause before you jump in. So I just wanted to put that out there. So I'm going to start with Jana. Age.
I am 52 and I'm from Alberta.
Thank you. Sasquatch.
I am 35 and I am in Mackenzie, BC.
Thank you. Colleen. A beautiful.
Hey, hi, sorry about that.
No, it's
I'm
okay.
51 and in Atlanta, Canada.
Awesome. Thank you. Sparkles.
I am 48 and in Alberta.
Awesome. TT.
Late 30s and Montreal.
Cool. Thank you.
Or,
Panda.
Quebec.
29. I'm from Manitoba.
Awesome. And Jesse.
Hi, I'm 31 and I'm in Ontario.
Awesome. Thank you for helping me make TikTok happy by sticking to the rules. Okay, so we were talking about Jesse. Did you have something to say about like the wellness camp? Something that you wanted to explain, right?
Yeah, I'll be super fast. I don't hang out.
No, it's okay. Take your time. Take your time.
I've never watched PP because I just can't do it. Like, I know he's lying, but a TikTok live popped up. He was doing a rally about 10 minutes ago. He started talking about the F problem and saying that Cardi's not calling it a crisis. It's this huge crisis here. It's a huge problem. It's a million times worse than any other substance in Canada. And he's going to basically send people. Now, I used wellness camp just because of what's going on in USA, but he's going to send them to facilities. And he was going on and on and on about getting their proper health care, proper mental health care, including yoga and rehabilitation, etc. Now, these are words that are coming out of his mouth, and all I'm thinking in my head is red flag, red flag, red flag. This sounds exactly like what they're suggesting south of us, as far as I'm concerned, and he's just painting this picture, or he's just lying.
Minus the yoga.
Yeah. But I just wanted to mention that because to me, all I can picture is red flag, red flag, red flag. He's lying, and I don't know. It made me feel kind of sick, and I wanted to say something.
Can I piggyback?
Yeah.
Go
off
for
of
it.
that? Yeah, what I didn't watch what you just saw, but based on his speech on Sunday, um, I observed that, I'm sure all of you guys have observed this, but he just says rhetoric and it's vague. And that's
Yes.
on purpose so that we fill in what the meanings are. And so, like, on the F issue specifically, he lamented about, like, we're going to be tougher on crime. We're going to make, he's talking about mandatory minimums, which are catastrophic, and perpetuate inequity and take away judiciary discretion. But, back to what you were talking about, Jesse, he just kind of vaguely insinuates like, oh, we're going to be harsher on drug crime, we're going to secure our borders, we're going to
We have to say like substance or pharmaceutical or something. Just FYI.
sorry. Right. that's why we're saying F. Yeah, but anyway, you guys get my point that like, it's lacking any sort of specific plan or policy, and it's designed, I think, to have people just fill in the blanks, and that's why we get an icky feeling from it, but there's no smoking pew pew when he frames it like that, so it's very hard to call out what's problematic because he hasn't actually said anything, and then his base just takes it and runs with it. So PP being PP.
Yeah, I know Jana wanted to say something next.
Yeah, I was just going to say the whole wellness camps kind of idea that comes from the States is very scary. And I don't trust PP when it comes to any mental health related things because he uses incredibly ableist language. He obviously doesn't have respect for people who struggle with mental health challenges when he uses phrases like left-wing lunatics and such. He obviously doesn't have respect for people who are working through and living with mental health challenges or addictions, for that matter. I can speak from personal experience. Forced rehabilitation probably will not work. You can't get someone clean if they're not ready. And I lost someone. I lost my husband to alcohol. I know. You just can't. You can't force somebody to do what they're not ready to do. I wish it worked, but it doesn't. And he's also talking about getting rid of all of the safe injection sites, which is dangerous because it's not only dangerous for the people that use, because those sites save lives, because they're supervised, because people have, medical training around them, et cetera, but also the needles on the streets. You're going to see more needles. If safe consumption sites, they take care of the needles there. It reduces the amount of needles that you're going to find on the streets or in subway stations, et cetera. So, and one more quick note, you're right. He does talk in big sweeping terms without details because he doesn't really want people to know how he's going to do things, like saying the disingenuousness of a 15% tax cut. First of all, it is not a 15% tax cut. Secondly, where is the money being cut? Because I'd love to have lower taxes, but what is the cost?
Social programs.
Exactly. Social programs.
We know that, but the conservatives don't seem to care, right? Because they're the pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Oh, I hear some echo, sorry. They're the pull yourself up by your bootstraps crowd, but at the same time, they're also the we care about people lining up outside of food banks. Very hypocritical. Exactly. To be perfectly frank, I wanted to introduce you to the panel. I know that I know you, but I have to ask for your age just for TikTok purposes.
Hey, welcome, or I guess I'm not welcome. Hi, I'm here. I'm 45, I guess. I'll throw that out there.
I guess. Yeah. Some days I remember how old I am. You're welcome. What did you want to add to the conversation? It's nice to have you up here, by the way.
I'm not too sure just yet. I'm not too sure. I'm still trying to get a feel for where everybody's at with this. One thing I will say is that I don't think that Pierre Poilievre gives two rats what's about anybody or anything. I don't think that he really even cares about his policy or what it means. It's 100% about trying to get elected. That is it. He will say whatever it takes and do whatever it takes to get himself in office, and that's the be all end all for him.
Yep. And then once he's in office, he'll do whatever the puppet masters above him want him to do, as long as it keeps him in power. He doesn't care.
Absolutely, yep. and the irony is, just like in the States, the people that vote for him are the ones that are going to pay the price for it.
Yep, 100%. We are like a smaller mirrored version of what's happening in the state, of what happened in the States.
Absolutely agree with you.
But you know what? I mean, to be honest, though, it's not just us. The UK is going through it. Germany's going through it. I don't know if you guys have seen, but Germany has had some very intense protests from the far right lately, bringing the far right crowds from all over Europe to these protests because they're upset that the AfD did not win. So
Yeah,
Things are
I was just
pretty
speaking to
nuts
my
globally.
cousin. My cousin lives in a town called Saarbrücken on the, I guess, west side of Germany, like very, very just right
Yeah.
by the French border. And they were appalled that the AFD was able to get 20% of the popular vote. And the AFD is the remnants of the Yahtzee party.
Yeah.
Um, and like they're appalled that this is happening. But yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I keep telling people. This is a global movement. This is not just Canada. This is not just the US. This is a movement of all westernized nations.
Yeah, and especially when you
Because
see people like Elon Musk putting their voice and their money behind these parties. Um, and anybody that thinks that there isn't money flowing to the Canadian Conservative Party from him is delusional.
100%. 100%. 100%. Yeah, I agree. Does anybody
Anyways,
want to add to that?
I'll be
Because I
quiet
know
now.
how
You guys,
100% we are.
yeah.
It's okay. We'll come back. We want everybody to chat.
I think you touched, if I may, I think you touched on this earlier, but wasn't it found that there was election interference?
So CSIS does have some new evidence to say that there was some interference in the 2022 leadership campaign for the Conservatives. And they can't give Pierre the information because he doesn't have security clearance. And he won't get it. So it's a really weird place. Like, I think that our other party leaders are probably getting together to talk about like what to do right now.
And please
Because this
understand
just got dropped this morning.
clearance is one of these things, and I am a former Navy spokes with someone who, I won't go into any details, but had to have those things updated. And yes, they have to be updated. And I'm going to tell you something. He had his clearance done as had been overseas. That was fine. When he returned from his mission, we started to date. We were dating for quite some time. And when I moved into his home, I am a civilian who has never touched anything when it came. Yes, did I work in the communications industry? Yes. But I worked for a cable provider. I provided internet. I didn't have anything with communications of military backgrounds or anything to that effect. I provided you television. That's what I did. And telephone and cable, and internet. When we moved in together, I had to be questioned. I had to be questioned, and he had to have it renewed because I was a civilian moving in with a military member. So those things have to be done. The question goes back to, why has Poilievre, yes, initially had that. He did have it as parliamentary secretary. But when he got married, that needs to be updated because now whether
it also expires every 5 years.
That's true.
Right?
They do have to be updated every so many years. And when you get more higher in a party, in a political party, no matter what the party is, you are required because you're going to come across more information. So yes, this is exactly what is supposed to happen. You are supposed to have that updated. That is a fact of the matter. Now, I know there are lots of conflicting information on who is Mrs. Poilievre's father. Whether the information that we are receiving is actually correct or not would actually be a lot of reasons as to why that man does not want to have a security clearance updated. And if you don't know about her and her past, then please go and find some information. Now, from everything that I've seen, this is what is not a conspiracy, that there is some serious issues that are going on with what her father had done in the past. But there are questions as to why that needs to be done. And whether you want to be the actual prime minister of a party, I find it extremely irresponsible that when you are a party leader of a political party and you're the official opposition, you damn well should know as much as you possibly can. And people need to understand there is no one, when you get to the fourth level that you are supposed to have, that you can't have someone fill in for you. Oh, I can't make that meeting. You go and do that. No, because you have to have that level in order to know what's going on in the world. There's no NDAs. It does not work like that. And if you want to know, please go and look at the Canadian government website to tell you exactly those levels. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
The answer to why is pretty simple, though. It's plausible deniability. If for me, anyways, that's the most likely answer. Is that he simply does not want to acknowledge that this took place, and if he avoids it, he doesn't have to take responsibility for it. The same way that Donald Trump just said, like, he didn't know anything about Pete Hegseth and his security leak. Well, it's really easy to avoid taking any kind of accountability if you're pretending to be in the dark about it.
Well, and I agree with you to an extent, but again, that is also extremely dangerous because then there are so many people who are believing things. Let's go back to
Oh,
we were talking
absolutely.
about a particular. Let's talk about the F powder. Okay, we'll say it that way is the best way to say it.
Mhm.
When there was a situation when a certain thing, and there's a difference between being legalized and decriminalized. Okay, and when things are being decriminalized in a certain province, the country did not look at that as a decriminalization, nor did it become legal again. And that was solely one province. But the first person who jumped on the bandwagon was telling everybody, blah, 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 that a former leader of this country was the person who was spreading that around and making that legal. And that's not what happened. So this is why information, fact, and not just opinion are important, because that isn't what was happening, but yet that's exactly what he was spewing and telling everybody. So, you have to listen to everything he says, and the things that he doesn't say, you have to listen to even louder.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty obvious to most of us. Like, none of the other party leaders have had any problem being gagged by getting their security clearance. They're all freely talking about things. He just, exactly, he just doesn't want to take responsibility, and he thinks he can dodge it. So that's why he's doing what he's doing. All right, who have we not heard from in a while? Sparkles. Care to share?
There's just been so much going on lately that it's kind of like, where do we start? Like, where did sanity go? But yeah, why is there no security clearance? I would love the answer for that, and I would love people to press him on that. Everybody just seems to be giving him, like, I'm talking media, and reporters and stuff, they just seem to be giving him a free pass. Oh, you don't want to talk about it? Sorry, didn't want to hurt your feels.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, can you imagine what the media would be doing right now if this was a Liberal leader or an NDP leader? They would be losing it. I don't understand why the Conservatives constantly get a pass. Same with the Republicans. Like, journalists just don't grill them. But if this was happening with a Liberal leader, they would be going insane. The Conservative Party would be losing it. We would be hearing about it night and day. But when it's the other way around, somehow it's normal. It's mind blowing to me.
Between conservative and liberal, though, or conservative and everybody else, to be fair, is that we are all held to a much higher standard. And the second that you speak out about stuff, you're going to hear it from conservatives that aren't you supposed to be the tolerant left? It's like, come on, guys, like, really?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, think about every little scandal that the Liberals had over the last 9 years when it wasn't even that many of them. It really wasn't. And in comparison to the Harper years, where there was like 30 plus scandals and some of them were major, that never gets brought up. That never gets talked about, right? But the Liberals and the NDPs and the Green Party, they get held to like ridiculous standards, but the Conservatives don't. And that's absolute BS. That is just BS.
I think a big part of it is that those of us that are left of the right wing also hold ourselves accountable, right? Like if a Liberal leader or an NDP leader or a Green Party leader makes a huge misstep, we are all going to call them out for it, even if that's our party. But the other side of the aisle, if you will, they don't play that way. If their party messes up, they just, oh, well, that happened. Moving on.
Exactly. Jana.
Yeah, I just wanted to note, PP's, like the people that follow people just eat up his excuse that it's going to gag him in some way that he can't talk about things. But yet nobody else is saying that. You don't see Jagmeet. You don't see Carney. Carney got his security clearance right away. It took him 2 weeks. You don't see anybody else. Elizabeth May, they all got their security clearance. So what's PP's deal? Saying that it's going to in some way gag him is ridiculous. But
It
his
truly
like
is.
there's Janet Calloway there in the comments talking about how that's the reason, and they just eat this up, and it's such
And
BS.
100%. And if that were the case, if he is being gagged over something, what? Tell us.
Yeah,
If you
what's
have
the
something
gag?
that you're worried that you're not going to be able to talk about, share it. What's stopping you?
Like, I think he just can't pass. I think he won't do it for the simple reason that he's not going to pass that security clearance. It's that simple. And I'm not going to believe otherwise until he does it. They're all,
Yep.
yeah. See, just the same conspiracy theory bullshit, sorry, that comes out of that camp, and he says it, so they eat it up because they just want to believe him so bad. And I don't know why they want to believe him so bad.
Cult mentality.
Yeah. It's
Like straight up at this point, anybody who is, defending and, wants to continuously support the Conservative Party, I feel like they're all secret Trump supporters.
I agree. And it's sad.
Can I pop up? Sorry, I was talking with my neighbor there.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a theory, and I was talking with a young friend of mine, and he's wonderful. He's 21, and he's bi, and he's very, very progressive. And he genuinely thought he was conservative because he's surrounded by and he's Indigenous. He's surrounded by so many conservative young guys because he was raised in a logging family like me and around all these kind of roughneck guys. And he genuinely didn't know. And I explained to him, I go, well, do you think gay and trans people deserve rights? He's like, well, obviously. And I go, do you think Indigenous people deserve rights? And, well, obviously. Do you think women deserve rights? He's like, I'm talking to you, aren't I? And I'm just like, BB, you're not conservative. You really are not conservative. And I'm like, would you want your grandmother's disability to be cut? Well, no, of course not. And it's like, you could just see in real time his eyes opening. And a lot of these young guys, I think it's almost like a mentality of being validated by, we were talking a little bit last night about, I think it was last night or maybe the night before, about being red pilled, and these young guys and buying into the right-wing rhetoric and talking about what makes them vulnerable to that. And a lot of them is because they want that male validation instead of it being like, hey, good job, son, you can take this engine apart and stuff. Now it's almost like that horrible right-wing rhetoric is how they're getting that validation, mostly because their lazy boomer parents didn't teach them to do anything, that's how they used to get validation. But when you really sit and talk with these guys, a lot of them they don't have any blueprint on how to make a healthy community. You go to work, you have your shop talk, it's not very good talk, and you kind of go home and bitch about your wife. Oh, she's mad because I bought a new sled and do. And the validation that they're seeking could be gotten in a lot healthier ways, but they're almost like trying to follow a blueprint that, if you just go to work, that's enough. You can, you don't have to clean, you don't have to cook, you don't have to respect your wife, go to therapy. And they're starting to become angry because that blueprint doesn't work. Most of them are not very educated. A lot of them don't even have that much experience in the blue collar world. A lot of the young guys I know, they're sitting unemployed and not looking for work. And I'm looking at Marketplace for this $9,000 truck. I'm like, you're unemployed. Cool, I'll do whatever you want. But you can't, it's like this delusion of well, if I'm just like my dad and my uncles and my grandpa, and I buy the truck and I work at the mill and just, snag a wife, I'll be fine. And they're sort of imploding because financially they can't do it. And because emotionally, women, it's not good enough. It's really, really not good enough anymore. And I think that tied with that anger, tied with the fact that they have such a flawed blueprint of what it means to be a man and to get validated by these male role models that they have, if you can call them that, is a very, very, very dangerous path to be indoctrinated into this horrible right-wing rhetoric. And to be honest, even the older guys I talk to, they'll conservative, and it's like, well, what policies do you like? And it's just that they hate people. Well, these women and all these foreigners and stuff. It's like, can you name one policy? They don't know, right? And that ignorance is being passed down, and that hate and that anger is almost as a badge of superiority. And so we can kind of cut that and sort of replace it with something else. You can't always have a conversation with these guys. You really can. I've talked to young guys on job sites, and they're not hearing it. And I can hear them turn around and go, yeah, whatever, sweetheart, make me a sandwich. And you're not going to get through to some of them. But, you know, my friend, he gets it. And I'm talking to him more. I'm like, bro, I think you're NDP. Like, you may be liberal, but like by the sound of it to me, you sound pretty NDP to me. So there's some that will and some that won't. But maybe in the next couple generations, that line will get broken, because it's that like inherited bigotry and that inherited hate is something that validates them. And that's the scary thing. They're not inheriting the good jobs. They're not inheriting that nuclear family. They're not inheriting the yard full of trucks and quads and sleds, because they can't afford it. So they have no other legacy to inherit besides bigotry and hate. And it's like the only identity they have to cling on to, which is kind of sad, honestly.
It's also been magnified and weaponized, because if we look at tyrants across history, that's what they do, right? They always come in and they always gain power when people are struggling, and they use those struggles to sell them the idea that it's not their fault, it's somebody else's fault. And the reason that you're struggling is because trans people exist. The reason that you're struggling is because women want too much independence. The reason that you're struggling is because there's too many immigrants, right? Like, that is literally what gets sold to them, and it makes them feel better. It does. It gives them a dopamine hit, because they're like, oh, it isn't my fault. Even though the truth is, it's still kind of not their fault, right? It is the fault of a much bigger broken system, which we like to call late stage capitalism, but it's not the fault of their neighbor. It's not the fault of, you know, the random person that decided that they want to, you know, go through a transition at 31 years old. Like, that's not who is, that's not the bad guy, but they've been made to feel that way. And these, you know, alpha bros that spread propaganda have capitalized on this hate and this fear, because it still comes from fear, right? In order to be a really hateful person, you have to be somebody that's living in a lot of fear. You know, they're constantly fearing everybody else. So to me, it's something that's...
Speaking of the whole F subject as well, I used to sit on, it was kind of, we'd have these conferences, and I sat on this gang task force committee type of deal when I used to work for this like youth around Prince when I was a teenager in Prince George. And that's what we talked about a lot. And you'd have these people from, you know, the nice area of town, you know, white, cis, straight people that came from a good family, good part of town, and they're talking about gang violence. And here me and my little hood rat friends are talking, and we're going, do you know that these kids that are they come from broken families and aren't getting validation at home? A lot of these precursors for this red pill, misogyny, hatred is a lot of the recruitment tactics and how they pick victims for recruiting for gangs and also for human trafficking. So when we're talking about the whole F subject, a lot of these issues, the violence, which even in the UK without pew-pews, they've got stabbies, and the violence is absolutely out of this world in the UK against women. It's on the rise. It's absolutely astronomical. And having this group of angry men that have all of this anger welled up, combined with that lack of accountability, you need almost both, because you can grow up very vulnerable and have accountability, and maybe you're raised by a single mom and she teaches you good values, or maybe you have that lack of accountability, but maybe you don't have the financial or privileges in life to get to that point. But I just think it's interesting that a lot of the precursors for crime, for indoctrinating people into these lifestyles where the F word is brought into the subject, a lot of that gang lifestyle, it comes from the exact same vulnerable people. The human trafficking is a lot more women, and then the more gang side of it, the kind of the other side of it is a lot more men. And it's very, very easy to recruit someone that has either a weak family structure and no place to get any kind of validation. Their parents aren't putting them in college and saying, good job. They're not getting validation anywhere. And that's, like, we all know that's the root to crime, is poverty, intergenerational trauma, and a lack of resources and a lack of community, right? And I think they all go hand in hand. And that I think that it's the same target demographic, these young guys that are being indoctrinated, though I think the ones in a higher tax bracket or come from a better socioeconomic background, those are the ones that are like the PP supporters, the ones that don't even have access to these political conversations. They're the ones that go and join gangs, and that's their toxic structure, right? So it's kind of like, at what point is it just like, you know, At what point do we say, okay, the government propaganda, but at what point do we go, we as a community, what do we do interpersonally with these angry young? We used to just send them all to war. That's what we did. All those incels, there never was drug and these problems because we just sent them to war and sent the problem to Vietnam or Afghanistan. We sent it somewhere else. Wasn't a problem. And now these young men are at home. So this is what they're doing with that culture, right? And how do we as a community kind of cope with that and try and turn that tide? I try and do it with my little buddies that I meet on my job sites and my little friends that I have. But I mean, really, like as a whole, as a community on a ground scale, like if you even look at the people in the comments, you can sit and give them very concise. You can be compassionate to them. You can give them good information. You can listen and hear their point of view. And sometimes it's like hitting a brick wall. It's just like, how do we break that brick wall, that thick skull of, nope, I'm angry, it's not my fault, it's the liberals, it's the women's fault, it's these people's fault, it's the immigrants' fault. How do you get through that brick wall? Like, maybe it's too late. Can you only do it if you never build that brick wall around their head to begin with? Like, how do we even dismantle that,
I don't know. I think that the only thing that we can do is maybe work on the next generations. I think that this generation that thinks this way, for the most part, there's too many of them that will never change until it affects them personally, right? We've seen it throughout our history when we've had these, massive fights between good and evil. The only thing that wakes people up is their own suffering. When they finally get affected by it themselves, they actually feel it in their own skin, and they have that awakening of, maybe this wasn't the right way to think. Maybe this wasn't the right choice. But unfortunately, I don't know how long it's going to take for us to get there, and I don't know how many people are going to have to suffer until we get there.
I'm going to offer my perspective on this for a moment, if that's okay.
Yes, please. Please, no, we need a male perspective.
This and trying to figure out where to inject myself. Sorry, I lost an earbud. Trying to figure out where to insert myself in this conversation. Do you guys hear me okay? Just making sure.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I lost an earbud and I wasn't sure if they kicked back in. But anyways, I had a really great conversation with a bunch of the folks I work with. And just to preface this, I'm the only guy in my team. And I brought forward the question or the statement of, I'm fucking exhausted. I'm tired of fighting this fight. I'm tired of having these stupid conversations. And how do I move forward in this? And one of my staff brought up a really, really great point. They said, if you have the capacity to try to connect with people, do so in a curious manner. And it allows them to open up and creates a conversation. And for me, that was kind of like a light bulb moment where I was like, okay, maybe this is a job that I am required to do. And specifically now addressing men. As a leftist and a feminist, it's my fucking job to go out and talk to these people. Quite literally, when I run into people that have really hard right views and very bigoted and misogynistic views, it's my job to address them and to not necessarily confront them, but to have a conversation with them. And I think what has happened is so many people have created a scenario that it's all about confrontation. I have to confront these people and oppose them. And to be perfectly frank, sometimes that is what you have to do. Sometimes that's the only thing you have capacity for. But for people like me, look, I fit the mold. I've retired my affliction shirt like 20 years ago, but it doesn't mean that I don't understand that culture and understand these guys. And as such, it's my job now to go and try to bridge that knowledge gap to see what it is. Like, okay, if you feel this way, if you do identify with conservative leanings or whatever, why? And then dive into it and continue to ask questions to kind of discern where they're coming from. And then from there, once you really have a solid understanding of where they're coming from, now you can come back to them and give your input that might nudge them a little bit in one direction. And if you can get them to even move a millimeter, it's fucking success, like 100%. And unfortunately, often these dudes are not willing to listen to anybody but other dudes, and that's just reality.
I think that
Thank
that's
you.
great. And also, I want to say that that's part of the reason, unfortunately, that Jordan Peterson is so successful in the manosphere, because he appeals to that kind of like daddy figure and empathy to the men sort of thing,
He
you
feeds their
know?
rage. He feeds their rage against women, and that's the
He
only way to
does,
say it.
and he validates himself by
Let's
having
go back
just enough
exactly,
truth. He
exactly. Like
validates himself by having just enough truth in there that it makes it all plausible, everything that he's saying plausible, and then they buy
absolutely,
into it.
absolutely.
That's
Let's
the best type
let's
of
go
propaganda.
and let's look at the example of when he turned around. Now, again, I'm not a subscriber, but just Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition, of course. Now, when we had one particular plus size model who was classified as plus size in comparison to the rest of them, it was great. She was fantastic. But when they did another cover a couple of years later, and Jordan Peterson decides to pipe up, and his comments about what this woman, the disparaging comments that he made about her, were absolutely disgusting. Now, I'm sorry, I do not judge people on their looks for the simple fact that I have been judged on my looks my entire life. When he made his comments about this, I compared to what this woman and his own wife looks like. And I'm sorry, like, what are you trying to compare? They're two different things. This one woman is someone who decides to put herself out there and sell clothes for people who actually wear them. What does your wife do? She doesn't do those things. So she's putting herself out there to make herself known that it's okay to be a plus size person, because there's a whole lot of us in that group. But the way he attacked her was totally disgusting, only because she had more body than what he could handle, is how I looked at it. But if you have to be that disparaging towards somebody to feed the fire of rage in people, then that is not how you are supposed to conduct yourself as a human. And these are part of the reasons I'm glad he no longer has a license to practice.
Beautiful. I just want to be super clear. I agree with everything you just said, and there's a million reasons to despise Jordan Peterson. I do not support him whatsoever. I was just saying that, like, unfortunately, he appeals to lost men, because he kind of usurps that method of like, hey, I'm on your side. Nobody's advocating for you. And this
Oh,
is
I
like an
absolutely
in
agree with
point
you.
for him.
I'm agreeing with
Yeah.
you 100%. It's actually sad. And in a live that was here, I believe actually, might have been Feminist. Was it Monday night? Were the Radicals in Monday night? Tuesday night? Hosting. The particular it was Sunday. Okay. The particular question that was asked was actually very interesting, and I was really impressed with it, because it was asking, are we radicalizing our people, our young men in particular? And when I hear the things that are coming out of the mouth of Jordan and all of these other people, this is exactly what it is doing. It is just stoking that fire, keeping that flame going, because that's all it is. And I don't like the term that starts with an I and ends with an L, but a lot of them still are. And it's because we have stood up as women and said, no. We're not dealing with your crap anymore. We're not dealing with this anymore. And that has put a lot of rage into men, because unfortunately, many of them still believe they have the right to do whatever they choose to do, and there's no consequences to your actions. And I don't agree with that.
Well, and what happens is that now what happens is that they're set up to fail with women. So what happens? They're online. They're talking with other men. They're angry. They're looking at, corn and other, video games and anime where these women are so unrealistic and submissive, and they're these supporting characters. They watch Marvel movies, and you're just there, half the time to look pretty and support the male character. And what happens is they're set up with this blueprint to fail that panders to what they think they want. But what they really want is somebody that listens, somebody that cares and loves them for who they really are. But what they're doing is they're building a completely unlovable person based off of this bad information of what grown men that, these men, the Tate brothers, had to traffic women to get women to be near them. They had to go to a different country where women are vulnerable and take advantage of them to get women to even be near them. And they don't see that. But what they see is it's the woman's fault. And it's like, no, sweetheart, you're being led to the Kool-Aid and you're drinking it and you're blaming women that were never at the table and never even had the Kool-Aid to begin with. And every time they go out and they fail and they fail and they fail, it sets them up for a snowball effect where they're angrier and angrier and angrier. And when we have men check them, it is important for men to check them because they're not hearing it from the enemy because they're so poisoned against women. If they hear a man tell them, say a guy that's a little older and goes, hey, I have a wife, fiance, girlfriend, partner, XYZ, and we're great. And she loves me and I was broke and she loved me and I was overweight and she loved me and she stuck with me through hard times. And I'm telling you, it's not because I had abs and $1,000,000. It's because I was kind and I listened and I treated her like an equal and she was there for me. And that is, I think, the only way to get through to some of them. Are we going to get through to most of them? Probably not. Maybe it's just nature's way. Instead of sending them to war to die, maybe they're just going to breed themselves out, sitting in a basement somewhere, playing video games and staring at anime, whatever. That's their problem. But, if a man says something to them, they've made it so polarized that that's an ally. That's an ally to them. And maybe they can listen to that man. They might call him soy boy, cuck, beta, blah, 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 whatever. But it's going to have a bigger impact, unfortunately, than hearing it from a man. I know because I work blue collar, I get a little bit more respect, but I still get those snotty little comments. And it's just
I
like,
imagine.
well, you know what I mean? And that's fine. And they
Yep.
can talk snot all they want. And I go, let me know the last time you pulled a 20. Let me know the last time you pulled a belly pan off a buncher and pulled 30 plus hours chasing forest fires. You let me know. And went home and cooked and cleaned on top of it. You go ahead and let me know because I know you haven't. You cry after a 12. You're trying to go home after 10 because your tummy hurts because you had too much pre-workout to sit in a machine. Like, why are you buying that? Did a woman tell you to buy that? No, a man told you to buy that while they sit in their nice house in LA and on YouTube and sold that to you. They've never pulled a 12 either. So I don't know why you idolize these men that could not drop start a chainsaw. They've never worn steel toes. They could not use a power tool. They couldn't start a lawnmower. They probably couldn't pull start a snowmobile. But they're men.
It's because though they have that one little idea that makes sense, and it makes everything else valid in their eyes. Is what happens.
Well, you got to be rich, right? It's not about what you can do. It's about how you appear. Rich, abs, big house in LA. Look at all these women. I drive a Bugatti, right?
Well,
It's
not necessarily even that.
AirPods.
It doesn't necessarily even go that far. It could be as simple as men are having a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And then you put just hold on. Then you put a period in a sentence, and then your next sentence is trans people are the problem. If you're willing to ignore the second half of that statement, and you're just going to focus on the first half, it makes everything that person says valid in their mind. So when they look at someone like Jordan Peterson saying that, when they look at Jordan Peterson saying, men are having a mental health crisis, they're willing to ignore the fact that he also said, and trans people are the problem. So like that's the part of this. And
they feel
when
empathy, right? They're open because this guy gets it. I'm going to listen to this guy because no one else is listening to them.
But you
because
have
they're
to explain it to
screaming,
him in
right?
terms that make sense. So I had a person that said this actually, that quoted a part of a Jordan Peterson interview, and took a single line out of it and took it out of context and just ignored the rest of the entire interview. And I explained to him, I'm like, look, if I were to say to you,
we lost him. I'm going to chime in here. He's absolutely right when he says men are in a mental health crisis.
yeah,
Because right now
he's right, and it makes everything else valid, right?
And it's that empathy now. It's the only place in that space where they feel like they're being heard, and they've got all this pent up emotion and this frustration and sadness and depression and loneliness. And now there's this tiny little door that this guy just opened. They're going to spill everything out because now it's a safe space.
But you have to create context. You have to create an understanding of context. So the one that I used was a sentence from somebody else's writing, and the sentence was, "As in nature." Sorry, give me one second.
I'm going to continue.
As in everything, nature is the best instructor. If I were to tell you that line, as in everything, nature is the best instructor, would you not, at first reaction, hey, that's a pretty good statement. I like that.
I mean, it's Taoism.
Well, no, this is from Mein Kampf. Mustache Man wrote that.
Yep.
So if you put it in context, it now has a completely different meaning. And that's the thing that they have to understand. And if you can take it down that notch and you can really just kind of slowly bring it together for them and piece it together and bring that relevant comparison into this, now it gives them pause to kind of think about things. Maybe I do need to dive into this further and really, kind of acknowledge all the other parts and not just accept them as doctrine and start spreading this
You know,
vitriol.
you know what I want them to question is, because yeah, there's a mental health crisis for sure, but also there's an identity crisis, right? Like
Yeah.
we touched on,
Yeah.
like how like if you can use a hacksaw, if you have women around you, all of these things are things that have been fed to men that supposedly create their worth, right? So if you have the women around you, if you have money, if you have success, if you're strong, if you have big muscles, like these are the things that supposedly make a man a man. And then when they don't have them, they feel less than. So I feel like what needs to happen is a self-reflection and an understanding of how men define what being a man is, and that's toxic masculinity that convinced them all that BS.
Yeah, like I wanted to just
Can I?
go ahead, Calvin.
Oh, sorry, but I totally agree with a lot of you guys. Men are in a mental health crisis. There's a lot of reasons for it. A lot of men are lost right now because a lot of the generation previous to us, we have a lot of fathers that are missing. So we have lost that male role model of chivalry, of defending women and defending people that can't defend themselves. So we have a whole generation of men that are just attached to video games. So they're frustrated and they're angry. And that's where Jordan Peterson and some of the influencers in the States come into place. They validate them. So there's no campaign that Mark Carney is going to do that's going to change their minds. They're fully indoctrinated. See, what happened in the United States, they did a psychological campaign on the public, especially on the youth. And this is exactly what Mark Carney has to do. He's got to get psychologists able to deliver messages, short bursts of messages, to get these youth back, to get back that chivalry, to protect women, to protect people that can't protect themselves, to protect their daughters, to protect the trans community, the LGBTQ plus community. Because right now, whatever the campaign that Mark Carney is running is the exact same campaign as, oh God, what was her name in the States?
Kamala.
Kamala ran, professional, but it didn't touch on the psychological aspect of it. We have a month, and these people had 4 years, maybe 5, 6 years, indoctrinating our children and young men. So Mark Carney has to switch it up, man. He's got to get psychologists on board his campaign because it's not working, and I can see it here, even in my small island.
Well, what I was going to say was it's about the toxic masculinity, and what we have is a generation of young men who either don't have a strong father figure or didn't connect to a strong father figure, maybe, and they're connecting to these people like PP, for example, who are like, I've seen some of these PP ads. I don't know if you have, like, people, the followers post these, like, how do I put it? They basically sexualize PP in a way, like with
I was going to say, Jana, all you have to do is watch YouTube. And if you are on YouTube, you will see conservative ads if you're in Canada. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out. Keep going. Sorry.
But I'm just, the vision, like PP is like the big, strong, tough guy, right? And trying to sell that image, like that's what's going to help them, is to be tough and strong and big muscles and not woke and not caring about all of that woke BS. And he's selling this image to them that is not something that anybody should want to buy, but it's working.
It is, and that's exactly what Mark Carney has to do if he's going to stand a chance.
Well, he can't sell the same.
Can I add something real quick here? Because I want to address this one comment, because I don't think this person understands that maybe YouTube men can chime in a little bit. You guys are so blind. Here you are calling for masculinity, but blaming it for all your problems at the same time. I just want to talk about the complexity of masculinity, because there's toxic masculinity, just like there's toxic femininity too. And then there's healthy
100%.
masculinity and healthy femininity, right? So both of the toxics of both masculinity and femininity are both toxic. But when we're talking about these issues, we're talking about toxic masculinity. So if you guys want to chime in on that, go for it, because I know he's here listening.
I was gonna also say that it's always
Can I just let the guys talk for this one, and then we'll come back?
Yep.
Yeah, toxic masculinity comes from a self-insecureness inside them. And they're never going to get rid of that unless they do some self-reflection and let themselves know it's okay the way you are. That was my biggest mental health crisis. I was not okay with who I was, but it takes real pain for a man to grow. And unfortunately, we have too many man children out there that when they get into a little bit of trouble, their mommies or their girlfriend mommies bail them out of it. So they never get to experience real pain. And that's where this masculinity, toxic masculinity is coming from. And I'm begging all you women out there, you guys are complaining you want masculine men. Stop babying them. If they fall, let their ass fall.
You know, and I'm gonna chime in here too, and it comes down to what your definition of masculinity is. Like, is your definition of masculinity your ability to win a fight, or is masculinity also maybe kissing your child goodnight? Is it giving somebody that you love a hug? Is masculinity also caring for a kitten? You have to understand that masculinity isn't all these things that it's been defined as. Masculinity isn't toughness. That is not masculinity. Toughness is a thing that is not gender specific. I know plenty of women that I am fucking terrified of. And I'm a big dude. I do Muay Thai, and some of those women will mess me up. So, toughness isn't a gender specific thing. So they have to get this out of their head that these weird definitions of things are somehow masculine elements of their life. They have to get past that. And it's 100% a cultural thing. That there's this whole culture of men, like you said, that don't have father figures, and they try to associate themselves with men who exude this specific type of masculinity that we see in the media. As a guy who grew up without his dad around, I can relate to that. I remember what it was like not having that direction in life, and going down those very negative paths. Like I said, hung up the affliction t-shirt is um, so I get that, but it's all about changing a perspective on what it is to be masculine. And that's the conversation. That's the conversation I like to get to with a lot of these guys, is get to that point where you can have that particular subject come up.
Thank you for sharing that. I just wanted to read the comment from the same guy that first brought it up. He said, masculinity is bearing the burden of responsibility. That's it. That's all. You know what? Let's just say that that's part of it. Bearing, taking responsibility for your life. So then why is the party, right, the party of masculinity, the conservatives, why do they constantly blame everybody else for their problems? The immigrants, the trans people, the women.
Let me ask him this. If that's his point, that bearing responsibility is what defines him as a masculine man, so where's your responsibility to protect women's rights in Canada, to protect your daughter's rights in Canada against Pierre Poilievre? Isn't that your responsibility according to your own definition?
Well, blaming everybody else is just a victim, like that kind of victim mentality is not healthy for anybody. It's not, I find, like, and you see it with the PP and George, like all of these guys who are just like, everything but me is to blame for what's going wrong, right? They need a scapegoat. They can't take responsibility for the mistakes that maybe they've made or where they are in their life and need to improve and grow. But also, sometimes there's just no one is to blame. Sometimes it's just circumstances. And looking for scapegoats isn't like going to make anything better. Like, for example, the price of eggs in the United States right now is because of a virus, and probably Trump, but because of the I don't know if I'm making any sense, but I kind of got off track. But it really, like, when you think of a masculine man, like, for example, I saw a TikTok the other day. It was Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. You're probably familiar with him. And he was sitting in a chair in a pink dress with his daughter doing his makeup. And it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And if a tough guy like that can do that, that is masculinity to me.
I just got to answer this Jeremy's question. So Jeremy, what's happening in the United States? Okay, it's going to happen here. So what happened in the United States is women's right to reproductive care was being attacked, and now it's completely illegal in the states to have reproductive care, even in an emergency. So that means if your daughter is going to die, or how should I explain it? If a
Just
woman
make sure you use the word unalived, just to keep it the live safe.
So if a person needed emergency procedure to have this abortion to save the life of the mother, okay, in the United States you can't do that no more. You're going to lose both of them.
But can I ask, that's not the issue, though. The issue is that you should be able to have an abortion for any reason. We shouldn't have to put our lives on the line to justify our right to health care.
I know. I'm trying to explain this to this guy. So that's what's going to happen here in Canada. And I've been doing research on this. It started back in 1989 when the Conservatives wanted to have an all-out ban on reproductive choice with women. They lost it, they changed tactics, and as a smart negotiator, you start to try to introduce language and motions to try to get your foot in the door to introduce this legislation all across Canada. And they've done it all the way up to 2023. So what we're saying is you have to start thinking about protecting your child's life. We're talking about your child's life or your wife's life or somebody in your family. That's the point that we're making. They haven't stopped with reproductive rights in the United States. Now women's right to vote is on the line. And that's with the SAVE Act. And the SAVE Act, they're hiding it and disguising it as a voter fraud, blah, blah, blah bill. But the bill clearly states that if your birth certificate and your government issued IDs do not match, then you don't get to vote, which means a lot of LGBTQ plus communities that changed their names or women that married and took on the name of the man will lose their right to vote. So this is what I'm talking about. It is your responsibility to protect those that you love around you.
But can I make a point?
Oh yeah, sorry, I was just answering this.
Hold on. I know that Panda's been waiting to talk, and she's had her hand up in the chat, and then Sasquatch will go to you right after.
Yeah, so just also as a reminder that Pierre Poilievre has openly stated he's not going to block anti-choice legislation. Just as a reminder.
Yep, 100%.
Which means it's on the table.
Yeah, no, I read the Constitution or whatever their founding document is for the Conservative Party. Back in 2000, he publicly stated that he was pro-choice all of a sudden. In 2023, he voted for a legislation to put abortion back on the table. Last year, the Conservative Party changed their declaration that says they won't pursue abortion in Canada, but it also says in the same section that it says we will not stop any one of our individual members from being convicted or their personal beliefs of bringing forth legislation. So they're saying it on paper where it's nice and pretty, but they're opening up a back door.
But they also had, let's talk about Arnold Viersen.
Hold on. I just want to let Sasquatch, because she's been waiting, and then you can go right after.
So I wanted to touch on a couple of things here. We've had a lot of this is a good conversation. So first of all, I wanted to touch on the fact that the fact that we are, when you kind of go on the defensive and start to play on their terms and go, if it's your wife that was pregnant and she has kids at home, and it doesn't have to be a wife. You don't have to want to have children, and you don't have to have children at home to have your rights protected for abortion. I'm sorry. Love kids. Don't want them. Don't want a man. I had my abortion. I was back at work the next day paying taxes so the next woman can get it for any reason she chooses, whether there's SA involved. It's not the right time for me. Birth control failed. It's that simple. I don't want a kid. I don't want to have a baby. I have Red Seal hours to get over the next 5 years, and I'm not going to be at home listening to Paw Patrol changing diapers when I could go be a heavy duty mechanic, and those trucks can bring medicine and diapers to other women that want to have kids. And I think when we start to move our goalpost towards their end, what you're doing is you're playing their game, and sometimes going on the defensive is not the way to go, and going, well, women, sometimes they have babies at home, and now she got a hysterectomy, now she can't have more babies. No, all women should be able to have an abortion at any time for any reason they choose. That is true pro-choice. It should not just be framed in the context, because what you're doing is you're putting women back into that box that they want, that they're wives and mothers. And I'm sorry, I saw someone earlier saying, oh, the breakdown of traditional marriage is the problem. No, it's not. It's not at all. The problem is that people want to live that life. That's fantastic, but you can't push it on everybody else. And women that don't live that lifestyle do not have any less value to society whatsoever. Is a single mom valuable? Yes. Is a working mom valuable? Yes. Is someone that fosters valuable? Yes. Am I as a child-free single heavy-duty mechanic valuable? Yes, I am. And trying to change what women are valuable is playing into their hands. That's still misogynistic to me personally. So I wanted to touch on that using the framework is playing into their hands, that women are here to be mothers and have babies and be a wife. And what if it was your mother? Who cares? It's anybody. I don't need to know you. I don't care what country you're in. I don't care what you do with your body. I'm going to support your right to choose anytime for your own well-being. And even if it's not for your own well-being, I don't care. It's your right to choose. You can do whatever you want. The other thing I wanted to touch on is that we're talking about toxic masculinity. We're talking about toxic femininity. And another part of this propaganda, when I get pushback, a lot of times there's an assumption that as a woman that you want to be a mother and a wife, and the framework relies on that counterpart, because a man can't be his alpha if he doesn't have the wife and kids. The whole point of them is they're showing off like a peacock to get the wife, have the kids, show them off, have the Christmas cards with the matching red flannel. And great, if that's the lifestyle you want, fantastic. But the whole premise is propped up by the fact that they genuinely assume that all women want to be, a lot of these men think all women are trying to get money, they want to have babies, and that they're going to live off the man. Like you see a lot of these toxic men, I'll take care of you, you stay at home, traditional family values. And if a woman wants to do that, that is 100% her choice. It's in no way demeaning anyone, male or female or non-binary, that wants to live that lifestyle. That's their fucking business. But men's assumption that all women are trying to be a stay-at-home mom, or all women are too weak to go out and support themselves, or all women are looking for a man to take care of them. That's that toxic counterpart to toxic masculinity. And again, it's fine if you want to do that, but assuming that every single person thinks that way, I think those two go together, where not every woman wants to be a mom or a wife whatsoever and move to the suburbs and go shopping and whatever, right? Like, I think we need to break that down, because that is part of this outdated system that holds up this toxic masculinity, that, men are tough, women are weak, we take care of them. All of that goes together. And we need to drop that assumption that all women are nurturing and kind and sweet and want to take care of people. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't care. I don't want to take care of you. I don't want to be a care aide. I don't want to be a nurse. Do you? We need them. They're very important. I applaud them. It's a hard thing to do every day. It's not for me. It's not for me. If I can't kick it and throw a wrench at it at work, I don't want to be, it ain't going to work out so good. So I think that we need to, on the counterpoint of that toxic and positive masculinity, we need to open up that range for what it means to be feminine as well. Right? And that does not always include being sweet and kind and running around cleaning up and cooking for everybody and taking care of people, because that locks us into the past, and it just gives an open, clear pathway to continue that toxic thinking. And the more we check back on that, then what we're doing is we're opening up gender spectrum. We're opening up a spectrum of identity, because if you want to have a positive man that's kind and empathetic, and he is nurturing and he's caring, maybe he wants to be a stay-at-home dad, maybe he wants to be a single foster dad, whatever the case may be, then you have to have the counterpart to that. And I'm sorry, I don't want to take care of nobody. I take care of my lizards and me, and that's it. I'm helping people too much as it is right now. I'm helping a neighbor that has a dog that needs surgery. My dad just got knee surgery. I'm helping all these people around me, helping my mom shop because she can't see labels very well. And I hate it. I'm glad to help them, and I know they need the help. I fucking hate it. I hate taking care of other people. I just want to be in a bulldozer and bulldoze.
Bye, Jenna.
So, for me, we need to break down the opposite side of that as well, because it is toxic to pigeonhole women into this role that we're here for you and I'm here for my babies and everything else. And I'm not. I'm here for me, and that's fine. And to break down that selfish notion, I think is important to break down, because that's what men hate. Trust me, as a single, child-free, aggressively blue-collar woman, that's the comment I get the most, is that I'm a bitch, I'm this, I'm selfish, I'm a bad person, all this stuff. Good thing you don't want to reproduce. We don't need women like you. And no, we do need women like that. We need tons of women in the trades. We need them like crazy, because men are not stepping up and doing it. They're really, really not. They're not stepping up and filling the positions that we need fast enough. Hence why we have immigration. Hence why we have women joining the trades. It's because men are not fulfilling that role, and that's fine. Not every guy has to sling a wrench and be a beer drinking redneck, and that's okay too. You know what I mean? So I think it's a very overarching theme that we need to break down that idea of what is man and what is woman. And I think by talking about women and pro-choice in the context of being mommies and wives and being your sister and someone you love, that needs to go, and just calling it what it is, that women can do whatever the fuck they want. They can do whatever they want, as can men. Right? And if we break that door down, it opens up the door for the other side too, because you have to have that door open for that gender construct to go down, for them to go to either sides, because there's probably a lovely, empathetic man that would do a fantastic job raising kids or being a nurse or being a care aide or a child educator. And that guy, I have to open the door and switch him places. We need to break that idea down.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. I made a little Colleen's next, then Panda, then Calvin. That's how the hands went up.
I back everything you just said there, Sasquatch. I totally agree with it. And I have to say, not to go into details of things, but unfortunately, yes, I was expecting a child, and I lost that child. And in looking back at time now, in the circumstances on how that child came to be, I am very glad, unfortunately, that I'm sad that the child did not survive, but I'm glad that I didn't have to explain the circumstances on how that child came to be, who their father was, because that was a time that I could never go back and discuss. That was not something that I ever want to experience again. I am grateful that I am Canadian, and if the option had to have been chosen, that if I had to have sought out medical assistance to terminate, then I had that option. But I was trying to make my point of, and people turn around and are saying that Polyev is not looking to change that. I have to change that rule. I disagree with you. And I do that strongly and vehemently, because I sat there and I watched a person who is a member of parliament, who is a member of his party, Arnold Viersen, sit there and propose that bill to end the right for women to choose. And his entire party backed it. There were women in the gallery with him agreeing with this. I am totally dead set against that, because any person, and I don't care if you are, a man, you are a woman, if you are transgendered, the body is your body. And you have the choice on what to do with it. No one should be sitting there. I don't care what background you have. No one has the right to tell you what you should be doing with that body. And I have to think that a lot of people, and I go in with the toxic masculinity of having some, and that really does set off with a lot of women. We don't need you to tell us what to do with our own bodies. We've been working them just fine for how many years? I am in the same boat. I don't want to have children because I look back and saw what was happening in this world. How am I going to explain to people the amount of loathing that people have for others because they are different? What happens with people like that? Like I can't justify in trying to do that. People want to bring children in the world. Great. I give you the kudos because you're going to go through a whole lot of hell in trying to explain everything because children ask questions all the time, which is a wonderful thing. And we shouldn't diminish things or sugarcoat things. We have to give them in a simple explanations. But we need to make sure that children are exposed to everything because if our own ignorance is showing, we pass that on to our children. So if you want to be out there having kids, fantastic. But don't shove your beliefs on things that might be into the sky or whatever you believe and whatever deity that you want to worship. Your right is not to tell somebody what they can do. Because I think that if you really want to quote some Bibles, no matter which one you want to choose from, they'll be telling you that the ultimate person that was supposed to be, or the God deity that we ever whatever, is the one that's judging. So anyone who wants to sit back here and judge someone's choice, you really need to look at yourself in the mirror and make sure that you're okay with everything that you have ever done too.
I love her. Love her.
Come on,
Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Panda, Calvin, and then we'll go to Crystal.
Okay, so further speaking on what Sasquatch had actually brought up, how men are now slow to the uptake. My fiance is trained in like building things. He is trained. He's able to go and get his red seal if he wanted to. He doesn't want to do that, primarily because it's still the older people that are still, I guess, running the show when it comes to particularly the construction industry. And they're usually extremely like off-putting when it comes to younger people coming to take up the mantle. And as somebody who has to watch my fiance go through that, it hurts to see him on the floor saying, I don't want to go back.
Thank you for sharing. Calvin.
Yeah, so I love listening. That's why before I came on, I was listening to you guys for a while. So we all know that the conservative government is going to get rid of reproductive rights for women. That's a given fact. According to voting records don't lie. It's not propaganda. It's not a fair tactic. Number two, we do know that toxic masculinity has infected a lot of our voting youth and the general public. Well, same thing with toxic feminism too, because in the United States, an overwhelming amount of women voted for Trump. So how do we know it exists, right? We know it exists. So how can we, I don't know, make campaign videos or try to reach these people to take what they already believe? Basically, we're going to have to do some kind of manipulation here and redirect their falsehood and their false view of who to vote for into back to Mark, or back to the Liberal Party, or back to Mark Carney. That is the $1 million question. That's all.
Scott, you wanted to say something. Do you want to add to that?
I agree with that we have to look at those issues when we're looking at the young people, a younger generation, because you gotta find out what their concerns are, and you got to reach out to them, and whatever it is, and if it's a false narrative that they're hearing, well, then you got to find a way to bring that truth or the additional information that would change their opinion on the reality right now. That's it.
Yep. Mark, welcome to the panel. Can I just quickly get your age for TikTok purposes?
I am 54 and I'm in Ontario. Have you got an echo or is that good?
It's okay. I think everyone's okay with it. If everybody just has their mics muted while you talk, we should be okay. But yeah, chime in. Okay. And just quickly, for anyone that's in the guest requests, I'm not letting any more people up because we are going to end the live in about 10 to 15 minutes, and I want to have the people on here have a chance to speak. But continue hanging out for the next little bit. Put your stuff down in the chat, and I'll address it, okay? So Mark, go ahead.
So I heard someone talk about like Christianity. I consider myself a Christian. I attend a Baptist church. I don't always agree with the fellowship that it belongs to. But I think the misconception is people that actually practice Christianity, we're not to impose our views on other people. If you don't share my faith, it's not my job to say, hey, you're going to go burn in hell. I'm a firm believer of the New Testament, which there was only one commandment placed in that, and that was by Christ. Everything else was completed. Everything else was for that time, and that was love one another as he loved the church. So when I start looking at the conservatives, and I know I'm now tying politics into this, they are bringing religion into their politics. I may not agree with individuals or maybe some policies, but Christians are not the only people in Canada. We are a tapestry here. You guys, I don't know, I think, okay, Beaver Politics, yeah, we're Canadian. It's a tapestry. I have Sikh neighbors, and as long as their beliefs and practices don't infringe on my rights and your rights as an individual, I think we should be able to speak our mind and just at least be able to express that. And if you are transgender or a lesbian or gay, that is your business, because I actually don't believe that is covered under Christianity, or at least it shouldn't be. I think if you look back into the Greek, they didn't necessarily have a term for it. When they talk about sodomy, that was an act of violence. That was an act of superiority. They went in, they conquered someplace, you were allowed to do what you wished. And that is not describing a same-sex or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't know all the terminology, but it does not describe a consensual relationship between two adults. And that's really not my business. If they follow a faith, that's between them and their belief. And my relationships that I have are between me and my relationships and my God. So I really need to, I've voted conservative my whole life. And even in our provincial election, what was that, a month ago, I voted conservative. And Mark Carney came out and I read his policy. I've gone through the conservative policy, what their platforms are, and I'm scared. I think we're going to end up very similar to the United States if the conservative government gets in there. And many of my friends are not going to have the same rights as any other Canadian because they have a wife or they have another partner that may identify differently. And we all have rights. And I think the Liberal government, not all of their policies I agree with, but some very fundamental things in their policy, such as continuation of our human rights, as our housing, food, security rights. So that's just my what I'm saying tonight. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for sharing that. It honestly is nice to hear that from somebody who identifies as a Christian, because as you know, a lot of people who have been identifying as Christians lately have not been what I like to call true Christians, but Christian nationalists. It's a little different, as we know. So, like I grew up in a Christian family, but I was, my parents never really like pushed the religion onto me. They let me make up my own beliefs and my own mind about things. And we kind of stopped going to church when we moved to Canada. But back at home, there was still that like going to church every Sunday. And to them, it was just about like community, love, compassion. And again, just like you said, it was never about judging people for whatever they wanted to do in their own private lives. Like never did I hear my parents while I was growing up talk about how they hated gay people or people that were not the same color as them or anything like that, right? I mean, that was just never ever a thing. Never did they talk badly about other religions. Never did they say that their religion is the only religion that is the right one. Like I never grew up with any of that, and yet my parents still considered themselves Christian. Now they actually consider themselves atheists, but that's a whole different thing. That's a different story. But it was never. And I don't even know if they fully consider themselves atheists. Like they still have some religious icons and stuff in their house, but they definitely don't go to church anymore. Put it that way. That's about it. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's nice to hear that, you can say, hey, this is my belief system. This is what I believe, but I'm not here to push it onto you. And I'm glad to hear that you actually read through the policies and looked at the reality of what's happening with the Conservative Party, because they are not the Conservative Party that Canada had 20 years ago. They're just not.
No.
They've gone very far right, very anti-immigrant, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ plus people. Like it's been quite the shift.
We have.
Can I speak now?
Yep.
Okay, I just want to inform you of a couple of bills that we have to watch for. If the Conservatives get in, they tried 5 times to get Bill C-131 passed, and it's a backdoor effort to give the fetus personhood. What it asks for superficially is a double penalty for unaliving pregnant women, but in fact they're trying to get the fetus declared a person. So it was defeated 5 times. If they get back into power, they're going to try that again. And then in Alberta, Danielle Smith has Bill 28, and it's going before the courts. I'm hoping it'll be defeated. But she wants to give the government access to all the medical records. That's scary. If your government can access your medical records, they can do you all kinds of harm.
Yeah, you are 110% correct on all of that.
And I just wanted to say, too, when we're looking at what's just gone on with this not very secure group chat, and we're talking about our privacy being accessed at that level, look at that lack of security. So now you've got, it might not just be your government or law enforcement. It could be any radicalized group. It could be whatever. So if we're looking at your personal and medical information, and we're talking about wellness camps and some of the, Yahtzee kind of attitude, it's not just your access to abortion kind of healthcare. What if you have disabilities? Look at RFK talking about people with mental illness. That is absolutely terrifying. And then you've got a massive show of a lack of security, and people's information is out there. That is absolutely terrifying, and that sets up a lot of pathways for some very, very scary stuff. And it might not just be, camps. It could be, like I said, some weird radicalized group that has your information and comes in and tries to burn your house down or something, right? Like people are.
She's saying that she wants to protect children from having trans surgeries as minors. But in fact, it can be used.
Which isn't happening, just so that everybody knows. Just so that everybody here knows, that's not happening. There is no people under the age of 18 that are going through gender reaffirming surgery. That doesn't happen.
Nope.
The only thing that happens during the stage where you're a teenager sometimes is puberty blockers. Puberty blockers do not transition you. They just stop your puberty for a little bit so that you can figure yourself out. And they're also given to cis people that have extra hormones that are, for example, like there's men that produce too much estrogen when they're teenagers, and then they end up growing things on the front of their body, and they have to take puberty blockers so that they can go to school and be a normal dude. And those are cis men that this policy would also be affecting. So I just wanted to put that out there. Super grand, go for it. Sorry.
I knew some of those when I was growing up because I had those when I was growing up. That's why I hit the gym hard.
We're glad you got
Calvin, I want to.
There you go.
I want to congratulate you. You're my kind of guy. You really are. You're strong, obviously, and you're smart, and you're genuine, and you really like women. You know, I can pick up vibes from a man very, very quickly because I was a counselor to men for 20 years. As an addictions worker, it's primarily a male disease, so I really understand men. And there's lots of guys like you. You know, you don't have to flex your masculinity. You're just genuine, real guy.
Thank you. I try to be. That's the way my grandfather taught me. So,
Well, I think the
yeah.
male model has a lot to do with it. Like, I worked in the military, for the military, with both sailors and Marines and seamen and soldiers. And, you know, the military gives men a structure that they may not have gotten growing up. So they do have good male figures to model after. The military does a good job with young men.
But I want to touch on some point about the Christianity. I'm a Christian, but if you look throughout history, Christianity has been used as an excuse for some atrocious behavior in wars. So it's a cop out for a lot of people to use religion as an excuse to invade, as an excuse to segregate a group or to punish a group. So we have to make that known to the public that a lot of these Christian nationals are just using it as an excuse because they're too cowardly to admit their true motives. Number two is each and every single one of us on here have a responsibility. Mark Carney's not going to have the same social media presence as Pierre Polyev. So we are basically the bots for him. We are basically the advertisers for him. And somebody said that the Conservative Party isn't the same party. You're totally 100% right. This has been hijacked by the IDU, and it's not just in Canada. It's in the United States. It's in Israel. See, I follow the stock market and world events as a hobby. And what we're seeing in Canada here in real time has happened in the United States, has happened in Russia, has happened in Hungary, has happened in India, has happened in Israel. It's happened everywhere, and it's the exact same playbook. It's a psychological war and campaign. First to disenfranchise the men, make them feel bad, then they get a hero like Jordan Peterson and God, I forget the influencers in the States. And it gives the men something to grasp onto. I am so concerned what's going to happen here, not only for women losing their rights in Canada, but I'm also First Nation. And First Nations are always the first on the chopping block. I have a lot of First Nation people that are listening to Jordan Peters, that are listening to Pierre Polyev and idolizing him, which boggles my mind. You're going against your own interest. You're going against future generations of your own children. Then I see people from the LGBT community, both in the States and here in Canada, that are supporting PP. Like, dude, like, you're going against yourself because you're so psychologically indoctrinated that you can't even. And it's called a cognitive bottleneck, and it's based on the narcissistic cycle. Because we have been exposed to trauma, which was COVID, our psychological capacity, our cognitive capacity and critical thinking has gone down. And after COVID, we got introduced to TikTok, and TikTok fed us these endorphins. You remember when we first got on TikTok, it was always happy laugh videos, and it would entertain us for hours. It got us hooked. Then after it got us hooked, it started giving us these videos of indoctrination, of male disenfranchisement, male anger, and then it would give us the happy videos again. Then it would piss us off again. Then Jordan Peters comes in. It's a whole cycle that has been going on. It hasn't been going on for just a year or two. It's been going on for a number of years, since COVID, basically in North America.
It goes back even before COVID, because let's not forget Donald Trump was elected back in 2016 the first time, and it was going on way before that. We started having Russian propaganda influence campaigns on our social media pages as far back as 2013, 2014. They started infiltrating a little bit, and then COVID was just that perfect storm to completely come in and be used as a conspiracy in order to get people on one side or the other, right? I mean, it was wild. I mean, the places like Gaia, which were, meant for yoga and meditation and spirituality, started pumping out conspiracy documentaries throughout COVID, big time. It was, I canceled my membership as soon as I saw that, because I was a Gaia member for a long time. I've been a yoga teacher for 15 years. And what I saw happen in the spiritual community was wild. These people that were never, ever, filled with rage and filled with lies, all of a sudden started clinging on to them because they found the ways into different communities to see how different communities could be targeted, right? So the propaganda was there before. That was like the seeds that they planted. And then they really watered those seeds and added a bunch of fertilizer when it came to COVID.
See,
and then the Ukraine war too, right? In 2022, that's when a whole slew of more propaganda started coming on. So it was exponential by that point.
It's a failure, really, of the governments, because for years, for as long as I remember, since social media, there has not been a legislation to govern social media, and now we are paying the price of that.
I think it's a big part of it was, governments across the world did not want to infringe on people's free speech. And this whole thing of free speech has now developed into the biggest propaganda campaign we've ever seen in our lives. Because, back in the day, propaganda campaigns were posters on the streets and newspapers. Now it's this piece of propaganda that's here all day, every single day. And it takes somebody who's educated to be able to sort through all that information.
True.
Yes,
At the same time, I also
cannot infringe on somebody's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, though. And that is the way they could have introduced legislation. Propaganda, and if you say something and it hurts somebody, you can use the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to introduce legislation based on that, because you're hurting another individual.
Exactly.
And they should have tried something. It was really a failure of all governments, even our own government, to introduce legislation on that.
They should have started the legislation, though, as soon as social media took off. And at that point, people were still believing in the common sense and the goodness of human beings. That's the problem, right? Because by the time that they needed to introduce it, they knew that if they did introduce it, it would cause an uprise because people were already radicalized at this point, and they were going to go, oh, this is against my freedom of speech, even if it didn't actually infringe on free speech, because as somebody mentioned it in the comments, private entities don't get the same rights as individual citizens. But unfortunately, the backlash would have been huge because it would have been introduced too late. And now it's way too late. And I have no idea how we're going to manage the future because let's be completely honest here, even if the Liberals win, this isn't over by any means.
No,
not even close.
If it's going to be
not
worse,
even,
it's going to set it like on fire because it's going to make it at this stage in the game. Like you have to admit, it must burn the shit out of a little man at this stage in the game that somebody else would literally. We walked him in off the street. We walked him off the street 6 weeks ago, and we landed in a position to lead this country. It must burn so bad that it is, Prime Minister Carney, and that man has had 3 failed, non-confidence votes. How is he still leader? Because I have a political background. If you failed 1 non-confidence vote, they'd be like, well, depending on what the topic was, okay, well, maybe we'll let you stay in. Okay, fine. Now you did a 2nd failed vote, and we kept you in. That makes no sense to me at all. So again, there is something that is, these roots of this seed are so deep that people are not paying attention. And again, I'm not a conspiracy person, but there is so much that is not being told to us or being honest about. And everyone is coming up with things. But that's my point. When we go back, when we talked about, someone had mentioned the point about we wanted to put in bills to limit on what can be heard with the internet and stuff. Now, I will grant it, I agree with that. But when the conflict broke out between Ukraine and Russia, we turned around, and at one point they were showing Ukraine. Now, there was a group of young soldiers, they were legitimate soldiers that were from Russia. When they landed here expecting that they're going to be met by Ukrainians, guns blazing, ready to go, we're going to stand up to you, pew-pews, excuse me, we're ready to defend this, they realized these people are opening their doors. They are offering them food. They are offering them the phone to call home. And they have called home back to people and said, we are lied to. We have been lied to. Nothing is happening here. They are not attacking us. We are attacking them. And this was said in this, on one of these reporter, I can't remember, I believe, yes, it was probably CBC. Don't come at me because, again, they're the ones that are in most of the times that I'm seeing this, that this is where they are. And if this is what the Ukrainian soldiers, or the Russian soldiers are being told, that we aren't being told the truth, I go back to, I guess social media isn't always all that bad. Because if it wasn't for the social media, you have to admit, many of these, how's the word? I don't really like the word. Non-democratic areas, okay? How you want to run your own country is your business. I don't live there. I live in a land of the free place. If you really limit a lot of stuff that is being told, and I hate to say it, but I know we're seeing it here too. You're seeing a lot of, we'll tell you the big dramatic story, we'll flail our arms like we're Wacky Wild and Flailing Two Bands on you a car, but we'll, in the corner, quietly not tell you exactly what's going on, so we can really screw things up. And I agree that we're calling out a lot of things on social media. We're calling out, the fakeness of AI. We are doing that, and I commend Canadians for standing up and calling out the BS that they are seeing because they had to deal with it and watching it from the US, that we are standing up and saying, that's not true. You're not being honest, and calling them out on exactly and holding their feet to the fire to tell them to be honest, to be truthful. I don't think necessarily social media is a bad thing, but I think you have to make sure you're listening to the right ones, because some can sit there, and the ones that are the loudest are not the ones necessarily telling you the fact.
Well, that Tenet Media is a good example. She got $6 million. She was paid $6 million
exactly
to run a podcast. She hired people who ran their podcast. They had over 1 million followers. She was paid by Russia.
Exactly. And how many of those influencers were done? And I mean, we all had seen those. You all see those little tiny embedded messages. Maybe it's me. Maybe I just have that ability to notice all of those things. But I can pick the fakeness out so quickly. And that's what I'm saying. When we have all of this, it's it's a little bit crazy. Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sure.
No, it's okay. I want to let Panda talk because she's had her hand up for a really long time, but I just didn't want to interrupt everybody. But Panda, we're going to listen to you, and then we're going to go through the whole panel. Yeah. Everyone's going to say their last piece, and then I'm going to call it a night, okay? So Panda, go for it.
Yeah, no, like as far back as I can remember, like even before Crimea, yeah, there's been Russian problems with things. Speaking on that, I did receive a phone call yesterday because I said, you know what, the CBC as an institution is more important than anything at this point in time, objectively. I had a call from a survey being all like, yeah, so do you think the CBC is really important? I said, against like American disinformation. And I was like, yes, and also against Russian disinformation. And the survey ended basically right there. At that point in time, I was a little confused, but I'm ultimately like, maybe this wasn't in good faith asked.
I don't know. I have no idea. There's been a lot of weird surveys. If Jana was here, she'd be able to tell you she's gotten some weird calls from potential. Did you ask who it was? Like, did they say that they're CBC?
No, they weren't CBC. They were friends of CBC, apparently.
Little sketchy.
I wonder if that had to do with their campaign that they've gone on. I'm assuming everyone here is Canadian, so you probably have seen there, you see the FU and the last two are blanked out, the CBC. And have you guys noticed this push that's been happening? And you all think it's all, look, F the CBC, and it's all these different people. And they turned around, of course, when the two last letters are revealed, it comes out it's fund the CBC. And I think that I definitely, again, it is the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. I definitely think that is something that we should be looking at, considering Host Media, which owns CTV and owns part of the Bell situation, is an American-owned company. The last
75% of most of our media is American-owned.
Exactly. The last Canadian paper that was owned, which was the oldest in the country, Joe Howe, if there's a man name you know, folks, check out Nova Scotia history. The man was an amazing premier for the province. And, that was the paper, the Chronicle Herald. And it was scooped up and absorbed amongst so many things. And the changes that they've made is absolutely ridiculous now. There's nothing local. There's nothing talking about all the restructurization that's happening here in Halifax. It's known as we are the fastest growing city in the country. And I have to tell you, if you've ever been to Nova Scotia, if you've ever visited any part of Halifax, you know what? Come quickly, because it has changed so much. Our historical buildings have been taken down. This is progress, apparently. But I don't see it as progress. We're changing so much. And in taking the media away from letting people know what's happening, this is part of the issue. So yes, I would say fund the CBC. Pay attention to what's going on.
Okay. Thank you for that, by the way. We are going to go through the panel and get everybody's last thoughts for tonight. We've gone a little bit over time, so but that's okay. Let's start with Mark. We'll go Mark, Sasquatch, Colleen, Supergran, Panda, Calvin, and Scott.
Thanks everybody for letting me on the panel tonight, and I hope that I'll catch it again. I am now following and probably will be a supporter later. And it's nice to be on a panel that actually has conversations instead of just screaming matches at each other. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. That's what we try to build here. No screaming at each other, no bueno. Okay, Sasquatch.
Oh, I just want to say this was a good one. We hopped around a lot. We had a lot of different topics and kind of a diverse crew today. We had a lot of different opinions, and no, it was a good one. Thanks for having me up.
Thanks for being here. Colleen.
Again, same. Great group of folks. I have added a few of you on the follows, and I noticed if you'll follow back. Great panel, lots of honest discussion, lots of productive discussion. And I think we actually did cover a lot of topics that I think a lot of people have a lot of opinions and questions about. And the fact that we've got them answered, I think, is a good start. So thanks very much, guys. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Super grand.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, it has been a wonderful evening. I'm glad I joined you, and I will join you again.
Thank you so much. Panda.
It's always a pleasure to come up, even after a little bit of a break. So, yeah, y'all have a great night.
Thank you. Calvin.
As
there we
always, I love being on the line with you. Always very intellectual conversations. I love to hear different perspectives from intelligent people. I really do. I like being engaged and getting new information all the time. So this is really a pleasure for me too. On a closing note, I beg you guys, make videos, share them, share each other's videos. Basically, we have to try to save this country. We have to save Indigenous rights, and we have to save women's rights. We have to save the LGBTQ plus community rights. It's all on us. How effective are we going to be? I don't know. I'm terrified of the future. I saw the patterns in the US. They did a valiant effort. I don't know if we're going to be successful. I don't have that optimism, unfortunately. I'm hoping, I'm praying, I'm doing my part, and I'm hoping everybody on here and all the guests that are watching us do their part too, and share information, combat disinformation, call people out. If they're acting like a traitor and spreading propaganda, call them a traitor, call them out. And those people that still have an open mind, talk to them with compassion. But there's some people that you won't be able to talk with compassion, so just call them a traitor.
You know, to be honest, there's a couple of conservatives I was actually able to make friends with because we just decided to be civil to each other. I have no idea if, they're going to sway my vote or I'm going to sway their vote, but we're not in it for that. We're in it to share information. We've actually followed each other and we're able to have some common ground and some civil discourse. And I really appreciate that. And I think it's really important, like you said, that if they're willing to be open-minded, if they're being respectful, even if they don't agree with your opinion, you should still be compassionate and have a decent conversation.
Yeah. And we have an advantage, right? Our next door neighbor went through this. We have the game plan. We know what's going to happen. We know everything, all the tactics. All we got to do is just play our part and hope for the best. And that's it. Good night.
Thank you. Scott.
Well, I do enjoy listening to your conversations. And one of my mottos is never stop learning. So I try to learn something from you every time I listen. Just a little bit who I am. I was raised in the 60s by a single parent. And she taught me that don't rely on a woman to do things that you can do for yourself and be respectful to them. So I've taken that throughout my life. I'm 65 now, and that's what you got to live by. And that's the way I look at things. Now, as for what's going on now, you're right. We got to get out there and get the information to the people that are willing to listen to the information, and you can add context to it. So in my case, my friends in the military are retired and they're mostly conservative. So I just add context to what they're hearing. If they're hearing false information, I'll give them information that is not what they're hearing, because they're in a different ecosystem with the information, and it gets frustrating, but I just add context to whatever they're hearing. That's what I'm doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. We need everybody to be doing that, in all honesty. Like, we really do. I even reached out to my cousin that I haven't talked to in 5 or 6 years. And I reached out to him yesterday. He lives out in Toronto. I was like, hey, election's coming up. You want to get on a phone call and chat about it? So he said he's actually going to get on a phone call with me, which is great. We definitely have a lot of catching up to do, but I have no idea where he stands politically. Zero idea. So it's going to be an interesting conversation, but that's what I said at the beginning of the live. Get on some mass texting campaigns with the own people in your life. Guaranteed there's people in your phone that you haven't talked to in a really, really long time. Just send them a text and be like, hey, did you know that we have a snap election and it's going to happen April 28th? If you want information on it, chat with me. I just thought I should let you know I really would appreciate it if you went out and voted. Don't even tell them what your political standing is. Just tell them, election is happening. Please go out and vote. If you do want to talk about it, I'm here to talk about it. Leave it at that. Anyway, that's what I had to say. I want to thank everybody for being here. We are Beaver Politics. We do shows every single evening. There's usually a different host for every evening. I'm here on Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes Friday, not this week. But if you go to our page, you can check out all of our different shows. We have them up in a pinned video. And that's all I have to say for that. Thank you for all the gifts. Thank you for the shares. Thank you for the likes. I really, really, really appreciate everybody. Have an awesome, awesome evening.